The gavel came down, its thunder echoing in the courtroom like a flash of lightning. The entire room spun on a dime into a strangling silence. This was not wood against wood. It was years of hidden truths ripped into light. Secrets that had been locked away were pulled into the light. Hey everyone, it's Anna. Welcome back to Core Wealth. Today, you're about to step inside one of the most intense, dramatic courtroom battles the Sister Wives family has ever faced. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end. Because what you're about to hear is not just a case. It's the sound of an empire crumbling. Everyone present knew they were witnessing history unfold, a moment destined to ripple far beyond those courthouse walls. Sitting across from the plaintiff's table, Mary Brown sat rigid and still, her face carved in determination. No restless hands, no darting glances at the clock, only resolute confidence, like a woman who had acted out this scene repeatedly in her own mind and was now prepared to do so. Across from her sat Cody Brown. Normally, his smile and smirk could dominate any space. Today, though, they could not. His jaw was set, lips tightly closed, fists so tightly clenched that his knuckles were white. Standing behind him, Robin was already in pieces, clutching a crumpled tissue, eyes welling up with tears, lips shaking with silent prayers for a miracle that she knew would not come. The courtroom was itself like a stage built for maximum impact. Winter sunlight flooded in through high windows, coursing across highly polished wood floors. The air was filled with the smell of varnish and old books, but the one thing you could really feel was tension. It was so dense it was almost unbreathable. Reporters filled the benches, pencils scribbling madly. Nosy locals craned forward, eager to witness the Browns' family soap opera live. And then the judge appeared, a no-nonsense woman with silver hair and half-moon glasses, famous for her hard rulings. "This court is now in session," she declared. Her voice was level, but the words fell like stone. Every eye fixed straight ahead, every breath was suspended. Mary leaned forward, her expression stern, poised. This was not simply about legal papers. This was about years of pain, betrayal, and silence, at last demanding to be heard. Cody, however, appeared constricted. For once, his boisterous voice and charm were useless. In this courtroom, power was the judge's and the evidence's. From the start, they were not alike. Mary's documents were neatly stacked and organized into a gleaming binder. Cody's, bald papers crammed into a worn-out folder, an afterthought. But don't be misled. This was not about forms and documents. This was about years of twisted family politics, betrayals, and broken allegiances. What began as a reality television experiment in love and family had devolved into a contentious unraveling. And now the courtroom would reveal secrets even the cameras had missed. As the judge indicated for Mary's team to go ahead, the room tensed. Her attorney rose effortlessly, jacket spotlessly adjusted, eyes shining. The opening words cut to the root of things. "Your Honor, today's case is not one of betrayal, broken vows, and the misuse of authority for personal and financial gain." A collective gasp ran through the courtroom. Robin covered her mouth with her hand. Cody's jaw stiffened further. Suddenly, the narrative was different. Mary was not the background wife, the afterthought in family portraits. She was the warrior, the one reclaiming what was her. Her attorney continued, promising to bring forward proof that Mary had entered into her relationships with the best of intentions, only to be belittled, rejected, and taken advantage of. Proof was placed before the judge, fastidiously tabbed, conscientiously categorized. These weren't merely records, they were receipts. Proof that would dismantle the carefully constructed image Cody had built for the world over the course of decades. The air was electric with tension. Everybody could feel it. This was not going to be an expedited case. This was going to be a war that had begun many years ago, with years of silent offerings and unspoken heartaches. To the world, Sister Wives was a television show about love, religion, and family. But to Mary, it was the slow elimination of her identity, her worth, her voice. And now, watching from the courtroom, she was finally going to be heard. So hang on with me, because what comes next will shake not only this family, but everything their empire was built upon. Cody's dream of a plural family built upon love and respect had been Mary's dream too. From the beginning, she committed to it, not just emotionally, but financially as well. Houses, family enterprises, joint bank accounts. Mary committed everything in order to make it work. But slowly, she realized the drift. Cody's attention, which had previously been spread among his wives, became centered almost solely on Robin. No one ever made any decisions with her. Her recommendations were rejected or answered with hostility. And then, of course, there was public humiliation. Cody standing on national television, proclaiming that sex with Mary was no more. That was not a declaration. It was a decree that she had been pushed to the sideline of her own marriage. It was when Mary began secretly keeping score. It started small, a receipt hidden away, a note scribbled on the back of an email. Maybe it was how she avoided losing her mind, but the scraps mounted over time into something more, her record, her evidence, her defense. The turning point had occurred during the notorious Coyote Pass debate. On TV, it had appeared as a raging row about blueprints. Behind the scenes, it was a battle of dominance, finances, and dominion. Mary came out of that fight with one clear-cut thought: if I don't get taken care of, nobody else will. That night, she called a lawyer. At first, she had no idea whether or not she was going to sue. She simply wanted to know where she was. But as she told her story, the retired lawyer leaned back in his chair, looked her straight in the eye, and said something Mary would never forget. If half of this is true, you have a good case. All changed from there on. Mary turned meticulous. She gathered bank statements, contracts, property deeds. She put together communication timelines, logs, and each and every scrap of paper that pertained to the family's financial empire. Bit by bit, she built a case not of desperation, but of quietly calculated power. And the people did notice. Cody noticed first. Mary wasn't dramatic, she wasn't loud, but she was different. It wasn't the silence of defeat any longer, it was the silence of preparation. Robin felt it too. For years she had been secure as Cody's number one, but Mary's new face unsettled her. It wasn't bitterness, it was determination, and that determination unsettled Robin in ways she couldn't quite define. In the weeks leading up to trial, the contrast was stark. Mary was holed up, sitting with her attorney on a daily basis, rehearsing in her mind her testimony until each sentence rolled smoothly off her tongue with practiced ease. When she did occasionally surface online, her messages were curt but scathing. Words of determination, worth, and not getting deleted. Fans speculated for hours, but nobody ever quite knew what she was preparing for. Cody himself maintained his public persona. He did interviews, crying, portraying himself as a man struggling to hold intact the impossible ideal of plural marriage. He spoke of oneness, sacrifice, and love. But in private, the mask broke. He strode back and forth late at night, upset that Mary refused to answer his phone calls, upset that she wouldn't talk it out. Even Robin couldn't calm him down. "She won't follow through," she murmured, to herself almost as much as to Cody. But somewhere deep within him, he knew that glance in Mary's eyes, the glance of a human being who had reached their breaking point. And then the petition became public. Headlines scrolled across tabloids and talk shows, message boards lit up with gossip. Paparazzi camped out outside Mary's favorite spots, but she didn't run, didn't hide. This was not about revenge. This was about seizing at last control of her own life. On the night before trial, Mary sat in her kitchen with her attorney, going over the case one last time. The lawyer ran her finger along the timeline they could see. "Stop here," she directed. "Take a breath. The judge needs to be made to feel the weight of it." Mary nodded resolutely, unflinching. Meanwhile, in Flagstaff, it was not like that. Robin filled tissues, Tylenol, and snacks into an overnight bag, shaking as she wept. Cody sat silently, blankly staring, mumbling that things had gone completely wrong. The steps of the courthouse next morning were chaos. Flashbulbs exploded, reporters shouted, microphones shoved forward. Mary arrived first, smiling calmly in a navy blue business suit, striding along quietly, ignoring every query hurled in her direction. Cody and Robin came a few minutes later. Robin ducked behind sunglasses, mouth tightly compressed. Cody sported a crumpled suit, eyes avoiding the cameras. The chill between them was detectable even before they went inside. Inside, the benches were packed with onlookers, reporters, and legal experts. But all of that was no longer just about money or property. This was about pride, about vindication, about finally being able to speak. "I was wronged, and I will no longer be silenced." When the bailiff banged the court into session, Mary rose. The atmosphere shifted at once. Everyone's attention was focused on her. She walked toward the stand as serenely as if this were a 1,000th dress rehearsal. The clerk stepped forward, Bible in his fist. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" Mary's response was resolute, unflinching. "I do." Mary's voice was calm, controlled, and purposeful. She carefully adjusted the microphone, folded her hands neatly in her lap, and waited. The judge nodded slightly to her attorney. "You may proceed." The first question was so straightforward it was almost a joke. "Mrs. Brown, describe your position in the family during your marriage to Mr. Brown." Mary took a slow breath. No bitterness infused her voice, though, but rather honesty, the honesty born of living so long a truth that it no longer requires explanation. She talked about the early days, the days and nights constructing a home, the financial sacrifices, and the faith she had in Cody's vision of plural family on love and harmony principles. She talked of her investments in such properties as Coyote Pass, her work managing family funds, and her absolute confidence that all they created together would one day be divided equally. Across the room, Cody's lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his chair. They knew very well where this was going, then the turn. The lawyer for Mary leaned in, his voice steady. "Mrs. Brown, when did you begin to feel that your role in the family was starting to shift?" Mary did not flinch. "When Robin entered the picture," she answered sternly. "That's when I knew I was no longer a partner, but on the outside looking in. Decisions were being made without me. I was assured I'd be included, but I never was." The gallery was abuzz with whispers. Robin stared at the floor, her tightly closed fist holding a crumpled tissue so tightly that it looked like it was about to rip in two. Mary's lawyer moved forward with a tidy folder. "Your Honour, we present Exhibit A, text messages between Mrs. Brown and Mr. Brown about spending family business funds." The judge flipped through the pages, then turned them over to the clerk. In a matter of minutes, the courthouse screens flashed with the words for all to read. "Mary, this isn't what we agreed. We agreed the money was to go to Coyote Pass. Cody, things change. I'm responsible for this family, and I will decide where the money is to go." The courtroom erupted into gasps. One sentence hit like lightning. Cody squirmed in his seat. The judge's eyebrows creased ever so slightly. Mary sat quietly, recounting how the money was to be on common property, how she had been promised something, and how that money was diverted without her permission. Then the bank accounts, marked withdrawals, suspect transactions, spending patterns in no doubt, Cody diverting funds to Robin's advantage. Robin's tears now, her respirations irregular. She would not look at Cody. After that came Exhibit C, a letter Cody had written to a family counsellor. "Mary is no longer included in the inner circle when it comes to money. We need to restrict her access to accounts." The sentences hung in the air like a knife. Mary locked eyes with the judge. When I read this letter, I knew that my marriage was finished, not emotionally, but legally. This wasn't a family anymore. This was me being severed from everything I had helped create. Cody's lawyer sprang to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. The gavel came down softly. Overruled. The witness may continue. And she did. In cool detail, Mary explained how there had been contracts signed in her name, loans borrowed in secret, assets transferred from her control. She detailed the psychological damage, decades of her own silence for the sake of the family name as Cody announced on television that their marriage was ending. Each word was supported by receipts, unsigned agreements, minutes of meetings where her name wasn't mentioned. The case wasn't emotional, it was airtight. By the end of her lawyer, the whole room sensed it. Mary was no longer the bitter ex-wife the papers had painted her as. She was a woman with evidence, enough evidence to destroy Cody's alibi. The judge rested his elbows on the bench. Mr. Brown's attorney. Cody's attorney stood up, intent on retaking control. Mrs. Brown, didn't you willingly step aside from family decisions? Mary leaned her head, the trace of a smile on her mouth. No, I didn't leave. I was pushed out, and that's not the same thing. The cross-examination was strained, but Mary held. With every accusation came calm, measured responses, and records to support them. At the end of it, Cody's case had been reduced to rubble. He sat rigidly, fists curled, knuckles turned white as bone. Robin's face, smeared with tears, said the truth that everyone else in the room already knew. The tide had shifted, and it wasn't going back. When the court called lunch recess, the courtroom exploded. Attorneys murmured to each other, reporters wrote furiously, and rumors swirled through the gallery. Mary hadn't merely testified. She'd torn down Cody's whole defense, strip by strip, leaving nothing but raw reality in its aftermath. The gavel came down. Robin leapt from her seat, wet tissue clutched in her hand. She rushed to the door, heels echoing off the polished wood as all eyes watched her go. In the hallway, camera crews pushed forward, microphones extended. Cody stood up, then was checked by his lawyer. Sit down. Don't look like you're running away from her. He glared but sat, eyes fixed on the double doors through which Robin had just disappeared. Outside, Robin was immediately flooded by reporters. Flashbulbs popped. Questions were yelled over one another. Do you concur with Mary's affidavit? Are you in danger of losing Coyote Pass? Was favoritism at the core of this case? Robin's lips were shaking. She had her bag pressed up against her chest. She could not talk. She could only stare wildly back at the doors, hoping that Cody would come through and rescue her. But he didn't. The press swarmed outside the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions over the cacophony until a single voice pierced through. Robin, is this the end of your marriage to Cody? That was the breaking point. Robin's poise shattered. This is so cruel, she stammered, voice breaking as tears streamed down her face. She turned quickly, attempting to make a dash to the other side of the courthouse steps, but was blocked by a security guard. Cameras continued to capture every moment. Inwardly, Cody paced alongside the defense table. Recess had reduced the courtroom to a whisper, but all he could hear was the throbbing in his ears. Keep your head, his lawyer advised, his voice curt. We can impeach portions of her testimony, but if you lose your temper, we lose it all. I am not losing my temper, Cody retorted, loudly enough that heads turned. He dropped his voice and growled in the direction of the door where Robin had retreated. She's falling apart out there. His attorney's face turned icy. Then let her. If the cameras can capture her crying, it might even be a plus. Sympathy sells well in the headlines. Cody bridled at the suggestion, but he didn't protest. Appearance was important, but appearance couldn't dissolve the paper trail Mary had unleashed. Robin crouched against the hallway wall, struggling for air. A social worker held out a tissue, but her hands shook too hard to accept it. An ex-sister-in-law came up to her, counselling in a low tone. Robin, you have to get a grip. They're watching. How am I meant to put it together? Robin exclaimed, her voice rising in desperation. She's addressing us like we're crooks, as though we did everything wrong. Her voice rang in the corridor, heard by a number of passers-by. Phones, though barred from recording, were surreptitiously raised. Robin's thoughts flashed back to late-night conversations with Cody. She had cautioned him. If this ever makes it to court, they'll make me out to be the villain. He had laughed. They can't make you out to be the villain if you haven't done anything wrong. Yet now that Mary's evidence was before the world, Robin wasn't the favourite wife anymore. She was the homewrecker to the world. In the studio, the rumours spread like wildfire. Reporters jotted down notes, sketch artists rendered Robin's tear-stained face, and commentators traded worried glances. One reporter texted a hasty message to her editor. Robin lost it, and there's video. Another griped to a fellow journalist, tomorrow's headlines are going to be brutal. Hardly 10 minutes into recess, Cody couldn't take it. Defying his lawyer's counsel, he burst into the hallway. His feet echoed as he caught up to Robin, sinking onto a bench. He clamped his hands down on her knees, hissing between his teeth. Not here, they're feeding on this. I won't let her twist everything, Robin said. She's spinning it, Cody snarled, and caught himself. But we'll spin it back. We just need to appear to be together, to the cameras. When court reconvened, Robin had touched up makeup, smoothed her hair, and dried her face. But no touch-up could remove the visible evidence of her breakdown. The contrast was too great. Mary's restraint, cautious testimony was in sharp contrast with Robin's collapse. Even onlookers whispered. She's cracking because they're losing, a woman whispered. Her companion nodded, looking at Robin. Or perhaps because she's scared to lose everything. Either way, the damage was done. The longer the hearing went on, the more Cody's own cracks appeared. He fidgeted, muttered angrily to his attorney, and shot Mary angry glances the judge did not overlook. When Exhibit C was mentioned again, the email barring Mary from financial perks, Cody snorted in disgust. Mr. Brown, the judge interrupted sternly, you will compose yourself in this courtroom. He nodded curtly, jaw clenched, but the warning was evident. His cool was disintegrating. When the day finally ended, Cody and Robin made a hasty exit. Solidarity was a thing of the morning. Now they rushed past the press, eyes ahead, declining comment. Silence occupied the SUV. Robin sat rigidly, hands folded in her lap. Cody held the steering wheel in a death grip, knuckles pale. At last, Robin barely breathed. She's winning, isn't she? Cody remained silent. The soft hum of the engine filled the silence, his silence louder than any confession. When they got back to Flagstaff, social media was ablaze. Videos of Robin's courthouse breakdown had gone viral. Headlines read, Robin Brown breaks down in court during Sister Wives trial, and public turns on Robin and Cody in Sister Wives trial. Robin hid in the bedroom in humiliation, and Cody prowled the kitchen in fury. The trial wasn't over, but already they could take stock of the damage. They weren't losing in court, they were losing control of the story. Elsewhere in town, Mary planned for the following day with the same poise she had displayed all along. As Cody and Robin's facade started to break, Mary's stoicism never did. And then it arrived, the last day. The skies were heavy, the sort of stillness that causes individuals to hold their breath involuntarily. Everyone was aware of what this day implied. No drama, no acting, no second chances. This was Judgment Day. Outside, the steps were packed with reporters and photographers, cameras pointed at the courthouse doors like so many weapons at target. Some fans of Sister Wives had even camped overnight in the hopes of seeing the drama they'd been following for years come to an end. Inside, the benches were full. The air was lightly perfumed with the scent of coffee from travel cups held by early morning risers. Mary arrived first, immaculate in her pressed navy suit, hair pulled back, posture confident. She sat down at the plaintiff's table, briefly reviewing her notes again, quietly. Robin and Cody appeared seconds later. His face was pulled into a firm line, shoulders tense. Robin's head was down, lips pulled into a thin line. The strain of the past few days hung on them both in a palpable way. No reassuring whispered words, no smiling practice, silence. At 9 a.m. to the minute, the judge appeared. One tap of the gavel and the room was silent. Court is in session. We are here to hear judgment in the case of Brown versus Brown. The judge started in with a clean summary. The charges, the countercharges, the evidence. Their voices were crisp and professional, but charged with the realization of how much publicity this case had received, and the exhortation that established the tone for all to emulate. This case is not about television ratings. It is not about public opinion. It is about facts, legal requirements, and the rights of both sides. The court's ruling is entirely based on the evidence. The stunned quiet that ensued was absolute. Even the newsmen lingered frozen mid-crescendo. The initial decision came down like a thunderclap, the notorious Coyote Pass property. This court holds that Mary Brown's financial contribution and initial agreement of possession entitle her to be 50% owner of the property. Any such attempt to disenfranchise her or divest her interest without her consent is hereby declared void. Mary closed her eyes and let the lightest breathing sigh escape. Cody's jaw clicked closed behind her, his head withdrawing an inch. Robin clapped her hand to her mouth, holding back the tempest seething inside. But the judge continued. Second came money, the bank accounts, the skimmed earnings of the business, the frozen accounts. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Mary Brown, on her claim of financial mismanagement and breach of implied contract. Defendant Cody Brown is to pay $347,000 damages and lost profits and costs of court. The figure burst out in the courtroom. Whispered whispers passed through the gallery before the bailiff snapped. Order! Robin was breathing harder now. She leaned forward into Cody, telling him something important, but his eyes were glued to the bench, unblinking and frozen. Then arrived the turn no one anticipated. The judge delivered a personal rebuke, brief, unmistakable. This court is extremely troubled by the evidence of exclusion, favoritism, and manipulation in the administration of affairs which should have been administered openly and equitably. Although this court does not judge personal relationships, the conduct manifest here is unbefitting to any partnership, legal or otherwise. It was a line for headlines. Reporters wrote furiously. Twitter feeds erupted with momentary remarks. The judge's last words settled it. Mary Brown maintains a 50% interest in Coyote Pass. She is awarded $347,000 in damages. Cody Brown pays all court costs. This court stands adjourned. The gavel came down. The verdict was finished. Mary stood up quietly, collecting her papers with slow deliberation. Not even a look in Cody's or Robin's direction did she give, but went directly to the door, her lawyer soft-spoken. "Congratulations, Mary." Cody stood where he was, stiff and angry, while Robin finally lost her grip. Sobs came in sheets down her face, shoulders shaking as she buried her face behind her hands. Finally, Cody stood up, his arm across her shoulders, not because he liked it, but because he had to. In silence, they left. Outside, the tale branched off into two worlds. Mary walked into a whirlpool of cameras and questions but remained silent. Her peaceful, quiet smile spoke volumes. On the other hand, Robin stumbled behind Cody, mascara streaked, head hung low as he steered her through the media horde. Within minutes, breaking news flashed on all the major news networks. Mary Brown wins. Cody ordered to pay $347,000. Judge slams manipulation. Robin in tears as verdict rocks sister wives' world. Social media erupted with side-by-side photos. Mary walking down courthouse steps, smiling and serene, while Robin held on to Cody, sobbing uncontrollably. That evening, Mary was sipping tea in her dining room out of a cup. It was never a question of money for her. It was a question of regaining her dignity, her voice, her power. Downtown, the mood was stifling. Robin hid on the couch under a blanket, her eyes bloodshot from crying. Cody paced in the living room, ranting about unjust judges and perverted stories. But underlying his rage was the fact he could not deny. Mary had won. Not only in court, but in the court of public opinion. By night, that single photo filled every screen. Mary, walking away from the courthouse, sun in her hair, a face unbroken and at peace. And out of focus in the background, Cody and Robin walking away the other way, defeated. It wasn't a photo, it was a symbol. The day Mary Brown didn't just win a case, she won back her future.